I'm Mike Schneider. I'm the CMO of BevNet, serial CMO for many tech companies, and now for BevNet, I'm also one of the hosts of Taste Radio. So if you know my voice and not my face, the face that was made for radio, and I am joined by some great marketers here today. We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about how to prioritize spending marketing and scaling your marketing dollars. But first, I want the panel to introduce themselves.
Yeah. So actually, ladies first.
Thanks.
Oh, gentlemen.
Hi guys, I'm Jen Paragallo. I run marketing and product at Fishpeople, a Portland-based seafood company. We just launched a brand new salmon jerky that we're going to be demoing right after this. I'm really excited. I started my career, I'm from New York, first person in a giant Italian family to go to college. And so it was this big thing hanging over my head that I had to get a great job when I graduated. And so I joined a big consulting firm and worked in Times Square. I worked for Bain, where I learned a lot, but realized probably on day 2 that I was not meant to be a consultant. And then I moved west and joined Method in the early days, Method Products, the eco-cleaning company, and learned marketing there. Loved it. My first B Corp, dove in head first, marketing from the ground up. I then went to business school to be inspired, and while there, challenged myself, if I could do anything, what would I do? And I loved food. And I was maniacally obsessed while I was there about changing the way that kids ate in America. And this was right when Michelle Obama was kicking off Let's Move, and food wasn't as hot. This is over 10 years ago. I joined a company called Revolution Foods after that, based in the Bay Area, that's making healthy school meals accessible in public schools across the country. I helped them build a retail line and healthy vending line. And then I'd been doing long distance with my husband for 5 years. He was up in Portland, finally decided this is crazy. I moved up to Portland to join my third B Corp. Rev Foods was also a B Corp, which is Fishpeople. And Fishpeople is awesome. It's seafood's one of the last categories of the grocery store to truly be disrupted by natural. It's really hard for even super smart consumers to know what's right, what's good seafood. Is wild okay versus farmed? It's not regulated by the USDA, and so it's the Wild West. And so it's been really exciting as a marketer to join a massive industry that hasn't seen a lot of innovation, or I've been there for now 3 years. When I first joined, there was like nothing. It's getting a lot more investment recently, and so I love working there. I've got a great team, and I'm excited to chat with you guys today.
Arnold.
Yeah. So Arnold, Ventura. Let's see. I am CEO of Beanfields. I too am also first gen to go to college in my family. Started out as an architect. My first career. Moved on to be a banker. Did that for a handful of years. And then in business school, I started a company, a beverage company, where I had to go through a rebranding shortly after going to market. So that was kind of trial by fire. Then after running that for a handful of years, I went to PepsiCo's Venture and Innovation Group, Naked Emerging Brands. There I was part of the team that worked on the Naked Press launch, the rebranding of O&E coconut water, as well as the launch of Izzy Sparkling and a couple of other iterations there. Went to Calafia Farms, worked with Greg Stoutenpole, ran a couple of different businesses there at Calafia for us. In my time at Pep and at Calafia, I was also head of e-com. So it was this really interesting time. What's that?
He just calls it PEP.
Well, it trades as Pep. Maybe that's my banking pass. So it was this really interesting time to be at Pep because Indra Nooyi, our CEO, had just made e-com one of her top 5 big bets, and every BU had a staff for it. At Pep, we didn't know anything about the space, and so we were putting together a team, and I kind of got in on the ground floor and got an education on the space in that regard. So really exciting time, and then transferred that over when I went over to Calafia. And now I'm at Beanfields, and that's kind of the background.
Russell.
Yeah, Russell Barnett. I've been lucky. Started my career in the advertising space and got out of that fairly quickly, and got really lucky at a taste of innovation and cut my teeth on a couple of lifestyle brands, most notably Pop Chips, Kavita, and Gardein, all of which sold, some more successfully than others. I'm now at Mochi Ice Cream. We have sort of changed the way that ice cream is thought of. Frozen novelty space is sleepy. It's waiting for its moment. We're that moment. We lovingly say we're doing to frozen novelty what Chobani did to The yogurt category, we weren't the first guys in it. It's been around, but we created it and made it accessible to the masses. Very much like what Crave did, very much like what Kind Bar does. And our mission is really interesting and really simple. Play is our purpose, have more fun than anybody else, bring this thing to life. So that's what we're here to do. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's kind of happened in this bit of a revolution over the last 20-odd months throughout the conversation.
For those of you who don't know Russell, this may be an R-rated panel. He drops
Could
an
be.
F-bomb.
I haven't
once
dropped
in a
an
while.
F-bomb yet.
Not yet, but it
But
might
I will.
happen. All right, so since we're marketers, let's do a little bit of audience analysis here. How many startups in the audience? Raise your hand if you're a startup. All right, bootstrap startups. A-round, how many have been acquired? Okay, all right, so we've got a little level setting here. I think before we talk about spending money after you've had some kind of funding happen or you've started to see some kind of success, it's important to define what's marketing in a bootstrap or an really early stage startup. So who wants to take that?
I could take that.
Yeah, take that.
Yeah. At the beginning, your product's your marketing. You shouldn't spend money on anything else other than making your product look and taste amazing working in a food company. So that's having awesome packaging. We heard the amazing Angie story of how Velocity took off. Getting it in front of as many people as you can to get their opinions on it. Someone else had a great insight that was don't drink your own Kool-Aid. So I love going out there. And a lot of people worry when you're at a startup that's like, oh God, I'm gonna get this idea out there and somebody's gonna copy me. It's like ideas are cheap. It's like the execution's what's really hard. So share it with as many people as you can, get their perspective. But at the end of the day, everybody thinks they can do marketing. I always say being a marketer is the hardest thing. Being a supply chain director is hard, but I don't know how to do that job. Everybody thinks they can be a marketer. So at the end of the day, like stick to your guns though and go out there and get feedback about what your packaging should look like, but then go to a few core trusted people and just make sure your product looks awesome and tastes great. And that's where I think the early days, spending your money versus on, sexy, expensive programs.
How many marketers are in the audience? Raise your hand if you're a marketer. How many think you're a marketer? Okay, so so in the early days, product and marketing, the lines are really blurred. A lot of times your product person is your marketing person is the product person, okay? So you have an event, some money comes in, either friends and family or an A round. What should you be thinking about when the money comes in before you just start spending willy-nilly?
Well, so yeah.
I could take this one if you can't.
Well, I think that
Nilly spender. There's a lot of things to be thinking about, and unfortunately or fortunately, one of those things is, do you want to be around? And, or do you think you're going to need to be around? And if you think you're going to need to be around, then who are those be around players that you're thinking about, and what are the metrics that they see as success? So while you're trying to figure out what to do with the money, start thinking about who may be the next person to help you. What I'd also say is stay really, really close to your consumer. Ultimately, it's going to come down to a velocity metric. It's going to come down to a metric of, do people believe that whatever you've put out there has a real purpose in the consumer mind space? So really think about what that purpose you're trying to accomplish is, and look at the tactics that allow that purpose to come to life. For us, play is our purpose. So we do a lot of field marketing. So we lovingly say we play with our Mochi balls all day. That's important for us. So we do that.
All right,
a lot.
I told you.
No, I got Mochi in there. It's crass if I left that off. All right?
Yeah.
But I gave it a modifier, so we're all good. Still haven't dropped an F-bomb. But that's important for us. The other piece of that for us is knowing that we have to have more fun than anybody else. And we know that will manifest itself in the type of content that will happen in our social
But is an
space.
A round of investment fun? Because typically what happens is you're a friends and family round, you take angel money, and you're just trying to prove that you can make a product,
Sure.
make some product, and you can do it with some level of consistency, which we all know is really hard in an angel round. And then you take an A round and things start to get serious. You're actually trying to prove something within a certain set of markets or something like that. So now you've got some money. Should you start marketing right away? And how do you define your channel strategy and your region strategy?
Yeah, so I mean, me think about this.
And what are those things?
Certainly when you get to the point of
of
an A round, now the onus is higher, right? So there certainly has to be the strategy. I think I think you hit it right on the head. The packaging absolutely has to be there, or else you're dead on arrival. And I think for the folks that know the ventures that I've been involved in, packaging has been a key element all the way through. So the other piece, I think, is that the insights, so staying close to the consumer and the demo piece, those are all like relevant. And then what we're not talking about also is that just in our industry, at the core fundamentally, I believe that we're still, this is still a romance industry. We win a consumer one bag at a time, one piece of ice cream at a time, one drink at a time. And in our industry, what we have to understand is that you're marketing to so many different decision makers along the supply chain, if you will. There's people in the back of the store. How about the cashier that's keeping the product there on the register, so that way when a consumer comes by, it's like, what is that? Well, this is my new favorite X. And that's all before you even get to the retailer that allows it to come in. So there's so many different kind of points that need to happen. And that is different than a detailed marketing strategy that takes into account a trade spend strategy that's above the line, kind of like marketing treatment, or how about your pricing strategy, right? So we can go back to very fundamental basics of the 4 Ps. So what is your promotion strategy? Do you have what's your weeks on promotion? So basically how wide you're going to go, your frequency, and how deep are you going to deal? I think the category will tell you a lot of those kind of signals throughout. There's so many pieces kind of there, and I think I started to kind of peel back the onion a little bit. You don't have to have it all figured out, but you have to have a hypothesis that you're not going to go test, but you're going to go execute against at that, I call it Series A round. So you kind of have to have a little more robust understanding of what's at play.
So talk a little bit about defining a hypothesis, and we'll talk and let's talk about test and learn and what the purpose of that is. So what is a hypothesis? Give an example of a hypothesis and how you would test it.
Okay, so I'll go digital, for example. Mm-hmm. I think that if I were to go and get my product on Instacart in this region, I think a ROAS, a return on ad spend that I'm going to see there is going to be X. Call it 1.7 or 1.6. And that is a favorable return on ad spend that I might see in other kind of digital channels, or it may not be. It could be even higher. But what are all the kind of macro elements that are bringing you to that kind of decision and that point? And then what's the MVT? What's the minimum viable test from a dollar exposure standpoint that you can go out and test that hypothesis? So I remember working with Instacart, call it 3-4 years ago, when they had just brought on a team on the merch side. And I was like, I have $5,000. He's like, I'll take it, we'll do deals. And I came back and all of a sudden I saw that our product was in the cart, the number 1 product, along with Cheerios. And then I also saw that it was along with Applegate Farms. And then I answered a question that, okay, we clearly have another consumer besides vegan in the basket. So there's that's kind of what a hypothesis could look like. There's different, if you're really involved in the digital space, there's a lot of hacking elements. There's a bunch of different
The hypothesis was I'm going to go after a vegan consumer. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so that was the hypothesis, and you found out, oh.
I got really deep there.
So you set out to prove a hypothesis, and you have some success metric, right? And you should just look at that success metric, Russell?
No,
yeah, that's how you do it, right? You just test and learn all day.
Yeah, I don't test and learn. I like to give myself lots of room to screw up. So just, for me, philosophically, marketing is not right. It's a varying degrees of wrong. You just hope you get more of that. It gives you that room. It gives you that space for creativity. It gives you that space for thinking. Test, learn, and adjust. And I'm a huge believer in adjustment. Our hypothesis was, we are not ice cream. If we act like ice cream, we are dead. Before we've even started, our holy grail was, we're a snack that happens to be frozen. We understood that millennials snack more than anybody else, largest living generation. We know that they don't eat meals. We know the center of the store is a dead zone. We know frozen has no innovation, starting to see some things in there. And we know novelty category of all things, my God, it's just, there's nothing there. But we knew that being naturally handheld, dough and ice cream, and chewing was a really important piece for us. Chewing your ice cream is a snacking moment. Handheld, 3 to 4 bites, naturally portion controlled. Oh my gosh, what a freeing moment that is. So the belief that snacking was important, and then saying, we believe snacking is so important, Mr. Retailer, you ought to think about putting mochi bars, Mimo mochi bars, into the grab-and-go section of your retail space. And I'm not talking about Whole Foods, I'm talking about Kroger's, I'm talking about Safeway, I'm talking about the major retailers who let us put these coolers in. And we said, look, if you put it there, people will go, oh my God, you are here. I've been waiting for you. I've had mochi before. I've never had access to it. And I love to snack on this stuff. And that's exactly what we've seen. So now our whole agenda is you're stuck in ice cream, market like a, you're stuck in ice cream, be a snack and market like a beverage.
Okay,
Because
so
that's
you,
super
so you
aggressive.
get, let's say you got a $1 million A round, and you're going to put, and you figured this out. You've got
Yeah.
this chewy ice cream snacking moment, so you should just go spend $800,000 on Facebook ads, and you're going to get 1.6 back, or
Not a chance, man. That doesn't do me
Oh.
any good. No, look, we believe in a blended. Y'all should be thinking about a blend. And if your money's short, spend it as close to retail as you can. Just figure that out. Spend it close to retail. If you need
what
some,
does that mean?
that's your trade spend. That's your in-store marketing spend. For me, I'm a huge fan of Ibotta. You got ROI there. Massive, great spend. What you put in, you know what you will get out. If you need to be that distinct with your spend, then there are avenues that give you that opportunity. As you get further away from the consumer, that ROI, it's nebulous. You will not be able to correlate any of your activities other than what is my blend, what is my mix, and what do my turns at retail start to look like.
So I should just spend all my money the way you just said to spend my money, right? Return? Yeah, with being able to get a return?
If I had short dollars,
Can I do that?
No, you wouldn't do that because then you're not building your brand.
So that's a major point. Like, right, we're talking about brand without even talking about brand. So let's just kind of like level set there, right? So I think if you looked at like acquisitions and deals over the years, and just to understand what we are trying to protect and hold and coddle with care is the trademark. The brand, that's, if you're in it for an exit game, well, that's what the strategics care about, right? Because that intangible on the balance sheet, that makes up something about 40% of the valuation of a company's kind of like end kind of exit. And then the rest of it's on numbers and leadership and a bunch of other spaces. But the mark is the most important thing. So you have to like have that lens when you think about your marketing execution. And I think what you're hearing from us is that even in the world that we're in today, in the advent of online, you still want to get as close to the purchase as you possibly can. And that means that some of the tried and true tested methods don't change. So point of sale materials, freezer boxes at the check stands. And then there's the digital equivalent, right? Getting down that funnel. And is it the Ibotta's of the world? And they're variable. Those are ones that hopefully can kind of go up with your sales and that you can make those investments in. So I think just kind of a couple of points there that I just wanted to
The
share.
other part of that is, as your spend, leave room to, we say we weave a tapestry because you can't be one-dimensional because that's not what people fall in love with. People don't fall in love with an attribute that you have. People fall in love with who you are. And so make sure that your communication in whatever it is, find out what that dollar, even if it's $3 extra or $3 siphoned off, find room to be who you are and make sure you have a mechanism to get that who you are out. And by the way, Instagram's free.
So how do you find out who you are, and when you find out who you are, what do you do about it? So, this is one of those things where you're going to go in with a hypothesis about what your brand is. You're going to put some packaging together. You're going to have 3 brand pillars, and you're going to run all your messaging through that, and you're going to have like this idea of what your brand is. But if you're not willing to evolve your brand, the things that evolve your brand, once you have a product and a culture, and then you start to put it out into the world, you've got to be willing to have your audience, your audience is going to get a hold of the brand, and they're going to identify with certain things within the brand, and you need to be able to evolve.
So, I mean, key point of distinction, like, you absolutely have to know, from a brand perspective, when you go to market, there has to be that authenticity. I think you heard it from, Miguel from Siete earlier. You have to have a clear reason for being. Earlier, right, VMG mentioned, like, your onlyness. That has to be there. That's different than, you don't get to pick your audience. So you mentioned Instagram. Yeah. They pick you. Yeah. So you just have to go out with the most authentic and transparent brand execution, and then let the world tell you, that they love you back,
or they hate you,
or they hate
this
you.
thing about you.
And then you got to pivot.
They may not like a thing about you, but they like you holistically. But there's one thing they don't like about you, and just give yourself that ability to listen to that thing and go, hey man, I can adjust that thing. Yeah.
So you just go hire Shut the Kale Up and go have a run on Instagram with your product, and everything's going to be okay? No.
We don't know. We listen quite a bit. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit before about the industry. Where does a spend against trying to get awareness with investors or suppliers or service providers or retailers themselves come into play? Because you have a product, it's a great product, and you've got some money and you're advertising consumers on a national basis because you're doing stuff on Instagram, and everybody wants you, but you're not available in every store. So what do you do about that?
That's a really good question. I guess what I would say is this. You alluded to this earlier. When you have a limited budget, and I've worked at lots of small brands that I'm not sitting on millions to play with, you always have to ask yourself, am I going to spend on product or am I going to spend on brand? And I usually tend to, at least at the beginning, spend a little bit more on product when I'm closer to the consumer. So when I'm in the store and I'm thinking of putting a freezer door cling, for example, or working on a coupon with a Kroger or a Safeway or someone like that, that's all product focused. Digital, you can typically do both. I could have very product specific things focused on driving people for ads versus on building the brand on more of our organic channels. So I typically spend, I would say, I want to say 70-30 on product in the early days, because I think it's really successful in the super early days to show some momentum in case studies. And so when you're saying, do I spend to appease a retailer, it's like you need a success story. That's the holy grail when you're at a startup. It's like, show me somewhere that you got people to love your product. You don't need to grow like this, but you need to show growth over time. And so I typically will overinvest a little in some of those beacon retailers who are willing to take a risk on you at the beginning to show that growth story. And then, you have a savvy investor that's going to say, is that replicable? You overspent there. You spent 20%, for example, at this retailer, whereas over time, more like, let's say, 8 to 12% of sales is what you can typically spend on a customer.
So you put together a channel strategy early on that you regionalize. Of course, you have to get it approved by your board. You don't get to just spend all the money the way you want to spend it. And then you put it out there, and it starts to work on a regional basis. And you're thinking, all right, I can just, I'll just pour more, gas on this fire, and we're going to go, right?
So I guess what I would say is this. You were saying this earlier with regards to this whole test and learn thing. It's like, you got to try things out. You got to see what works. And then incrementally spend a little bit more. I'm not pouring $1 million into something that worked at one banner, for example. But it's like, I'll test it out in a few different regions with different hypotheses, potentially different consumers shopping or a different channel.
But you're not doing the whole Spinal Tap, turn it up to 11 right away. How do you know how much to turn it up, though, if it's working?
To your point, it depends on, so there's a capital strategy and there's a partner strategy and an investment piece, right? Because that's another marketing strategy in itself. I think so, you brought up earlier, trade. So I always want to just bring it back to the fundamentals, because those don't change. You have to have a push element and you have to have a pull element, right? So the push is what we're talking about in terms of the investment with the retailer, just to get it on the damn shelf, right? And then the pull is everything in the digital, the POS. Both components have to be there, and it's pivotal to kind of designing the strategy. Just basic kind of fundamental.
I think one of the things that we're learning here is that without an actual strategy it's really hard even for the smartest marketers to tell you how to spend your money. I mean, you have to work with you're going to be working with your investment team to prove something out, and then you're going to go in and you're going to say there's all kinds of different ways to slice these strategies, and you can, you have to put money in wisely, test and learn, or as we talked about in our in a meeting, fail and fuck up. It's like you have to be able to. I did it. I had to bring it out. I wanted to make it okay.
Got it out there.
So, and that's what marketing is all about. I said in the beginning that it's a science, but it's really not science. There's a lot of art in marketing, but you want to put somebody who's going to be responsible with the spend, understands brand, and then has some experience in a particular channel behind the wheel of your marketing mobile. So, who has a question? I brought swag for anybody who asks a question. So, because it's a marketing meeting and I'm the marketing guy. So, all right, what's your question?
Investors and holding companies all think that they're marketing people, and so how do you take their advice? They have a lot of power. They can change everything in terms of the momentum of a brand. How do you work with very powerful people who are giving you marketing advice, and you've been doing marketing your entire life, and need to accommodate them, but not...
There's a couple things you hit on. First of all, we've been doing this, so that should hold some weight. The other piece of that is they hired you. That should hold some weight. The other piece that I believe in is that you, as a responsible marketer and as someone who may have done this or may not have done this as often as some of us up here have done, that give your folks wiggle room. Give them the authority to say no or yes, or go a little deeper here or go a little deeper there. They've done this as well. And my big belief is that if I do my job well, then my board or investors, they may give me some feedback in their mind, which is a huge cataclysmic change from what has been presented to them. And the reality is it's about 10% wiggle room. So for me, if I can keep within that 10% wiggle room, and my board, and I have a board member sitting here, so I shouldn't be telling my secrets, but if I can give the board their room to move around, but it's not a cataclysmic thing, that I've done my job, and they're empowered and invested in this with me.
That's totally spot on. And just from like tactical advice in terms of how you get to that 10%, what I've always found is that you have to engage them at the meta level, macro layout. You have to have a clear strategy, like get them, bought in at the most highest level. This is what we're trying to achieve. And then you go like 2-3 layers down. So ultimately you're getting buy-in every step of the way. There's a couple of like tactics to kind of lure your board into like, head nodding as you work your way through. And then by the time you get them down, you've solved for magnitude or directionality at that point. And actually what you're addressing now is magnitude, and that's the plus or minus 10%. So if you come out of there and it didn't go exactly the way you wanted, because it never will, at least you're within your kind of win zone. So you just have to kind of get them there.
The other piece I'd say is, when you're early stage, your board can be a scary group of people in a really tough kind of way. And the reality is that board is there to make money, and they're there to provide expertise. And if you have the right board members, they're there to add value. Yeah. And you really, really should never be afraid to put the pressure back on your board to add value to the business that they're invested in. It's really important to do that. And sometimes, I don't know, is A-okay. So be okay with that. Don't have to be the smartest guy in the room with your board. Say, hey, I need your expertise. Here's what I'm thinking. Does this proof point work with you?
The other thing I'll add to that too, of not necessarily knowing the answer, is your board's often connected too. So it's like, I seem less crazy when I've got 12 other people saying what I'm doing isn't crazy. So I'll say, well, and I also think a lot of rarely does somebody do something in marketing that nobody's ever done before. That's not what innovation is. It's borrowing and doing it in different ways, basically. So I'll talk to lots of other people. I speak to lots of other brands all the time. I have my own little cohort where I'm like, I was just asking about my board. I don't know. How would you crack this nut? And then I'll come back and be able to use that other brand that I know they are like, oh, that brand's done some big things, as fodder for, hey, believe in me. There are other brands thinking this too. Or, hey, can you hook me up with a few other CMOs from your portfolio companies to kind of bat this around with? Something I do all the time.
Another question? All right, if you're testing multiple channels, how do you know which one's working?
You have to measure. I mean, the hardest part of marketing, I think, is just like, what do you measure? Some things are easier and more black and white, like velocity. Yes, data is expensive, but there's ways to get data. I think you need to have a hypothesis of what you're measuring and not throw so much in. When you were asking earlier, how much do you throw in?
Like followers, right? That's the most important metric.
There's so many metrics. It's like,
Speaking of, what's your handle again?
Oh, at BevNet Mike. Yeah, sorry.
thank you. So yes, do you care about engagement? Are you trying to just grow your follower base? Is email more important for you, for example, than social? For us, it's like velocity is everything, and then it's growing an engaged base, and I think that's a big focus for us next year. It's like, we could keep growing the top line, but I'd rather have really engaged, more like super fanny consumers who are going and having multiple interactions with our brand and basically being the new word of mouth for us versus just, we can go buy followers all day long.
Yeah, I found that if you want to know which one is working, then you need to control. So the easiest thing to do when you first start to get some money is to test single channels at a time and to test for specific metrics like, yeah, you can test to see if you can get followers, you can test to see if you can get sales. And then once you start to get more complex in your marketing strategy, you're doing Facebook, you're doing Instagram, you're doing SEO, you're doing whatever it is you're doing, then you need to be a lot more careful about how you sort of change variables, and you have to control for one or two variables at a time, or else if you've got too many different variables that you're changing, then your experiments get all fucked up.
Yeah, so you do have to control for the noise, and I don't know, like philosophically where you guys fall, but I'm more for like putting a lot of small bets in a lot of different places. So I don't like the kind of like Gantt, like one channel test and then see and then move on. For me, like I'm the growth guy, so I'm like tangentially, let's do it all at the same time, smaller bets. Yep. We will take dollars that are underperforming here and reinvest them in areas that are overperforming, and very quickly we'll improve our like scenarios and kind of get there faster.
And I agree completely with that, because I go back to the idea of weaving our tapestry, which is that you have to get to people in multiple ways. It can't be a single event. That is not what marketing is about. So it is, you have to find out. You may not have 100 of these variables or variable events. You may have 6 or 3 that you lean into, and then again, it is those adjustments. It is the dollar flow amongst those 3 or 4 things. The other piece that you said, which is exactly right, place small bets. Leave yourself some room to just get weird, because you don't know if it's going to stick. You are going to get a vendor who's going to walk in the door, who's going to tell you they can do something, and they're new. But you believe, you got to try it. You got to try it. The other side of that is work with a known vendor and say, hey, man, you got a bunch of old stodgy CPG guys sitting in a room, and you're selling them X. But you know what? You really want to do Y, or what is on your whiteboard that no one's let you do yet? I'm a great guinea pig.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, Arnold. No, I was going to say, I mean, we got 3 of the smartest marketing people up here, and then me. What's the hardest marketing question? Come on, which one's been keeping you up at night? Somebody ask a question. All right.
Mine is more for you, Russell, because you're in the frozen department.
Yeah.
And I'm an emerging brand that is just launching into frozen. And
Yep.
frozen is tough because you have that door there.
Yep.
What do you do to get people's attention?
Me? I break every rule. I act like a beverage. If you want to make innovation in frozen, act like a beverage, because no one's doing it. Look at the way a beverage company goes into a store and owns it, even if it's for 24 hours, even if it's for 12 minutes. Carry a sticker with you. My bag is loaded with stickers and free and swag and this. And if I see you in front of my door while I'm sticking a sticker that some guy told me I shouldn't be putting on their door on, and someone walks by and goes, "What are you doing?" Free box on me. That's what I do.
I used to put my book in the relationships department. Yeah.
I've got a question.
That's what I would do, but that's me. You can't scale that, but you're probably at a space where you have your 20, 30, 40 stores in a specific market or whatever it may be. So
Last question over
Yeah.
here, and we have to wrap up.
So I know in the bakery space, a lot of suppliers will provide ovens. You mentioned you provide the, I don't know if you do provide.
we provide them.
Okay. So can you just really quickly just walk through your ROI or, I mean, I understand you guys sell X number of units and is your,
My ROI is under a year,
Okay.
significantly under a year.
okay. Thanks.
All right, can we have a round of applause? Oh, you got a question? Jeff Kleiman has it. Wait. Before you have a round of applause, Jeff Kleiman with a question.
I want to go back down to the basics for 1 second, given the number of startups in this room. I get into 50, 100, 200, 300 stores in a region. And my sales team comes to me and says, we got to improve bulk. What's my first strategy?
I demo. For so many reasons, early on, yourself, like not just like people that you're paying, but get in there because what you're hearing from them, what we have to understand is like the most expensive and it's also the highest ROI. So your dollars can only go so far, but the value is well beyond what you'll actually spend. Just in the insights that you'll get as you're barely starting the brand.
I would add a little bit more to that. I would tell you that demo means field. Because field puts it into the real world, and you can control the message. When I'm in store, that message is, I've lost any ounce of control and any way of representing my brand. And when I work with field, I can control that message, and I can control the conversation. And that's really important.
And the last part of that, I think that's related when saying field, is the store staff. So what Whole Foods used to be in the early days of like going in there and getting each individual grocery team leader, depending on the department you were in, like selling them on your product, we still do this. Like we still send out kits to hundreds of individual stores where we give them swag, we tell them about our product, we give them free coupons to get their seafood department staff. It's hard. Get them to try our product, eat it at home so they can sell it for us. I mean, view the store staff as an extension of your team, and what could you do on a one-to-one basis to get them excited about selling your product over somebody else?
I think what you're hearing from all of us is like, we all have the mic in that situation. Like find a way to like have the mic. And tell your story, loud and proud.
I am the mic, and I'm going to say, round of applause